Hi guys, how you guys doing today? I hope your day's going well. Tim from Southern Exposure, and today what we're going to do is we're going to end up cutting up one of these logs inside the mill house. The log I have picked out today is a 10.5 foot it's a Southern Longleaf Pine. I'll go ahead and take you over here, let you see it, go into some detail on it, and I'll tell you what my plan is to cut it up. Okay guys, this is the Longleaf Pine log. Over here on this end is roughly around 17 and a half inches in diameter. The log is slightly egg shaped, slightly oval shaped, and then on the opposing end is roughly about 16 and a half inches in diameter. Now the best thing about that is there is very little taper inside of this log, so that means that no toe boards are going to be required. As you can see, this end right here is going to be the small end, roughly about 16 and a half inches in diameter. As you can see, it's slightly oval shaped, egg shaped, whatever you want to call it. So what I have is the longest portion of it laying horizontally. The reason why is because with wood mizer, your blade runs horizontally as well. So what I want to do is I want to try and get the sides of this thing cut out first. What the plan is to cut this out into is 1 by 10 by 10 foot for siding boards. My cut's here, and I'm going to cut it down until the pith, which is right here dead in the center of the tree. I'm going to cut down until I'm within 5 inches of that. I want to keep the pith as much in the center of the log as possible. Roughly about 5 inches from the pith up is where I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to roll the log 180 degrees and start doing the same thing from the other side until I get the width of the board that I'm trying to accomplish, which is about 9.5 to 10 inches. Once that's done, then I'm going to stand it up vertically and start cutting off boards. Whatever has wane, which is the bark right here, whatever has that on it, I'll take and stack off to the side, and I'll run that through the edge or at a later date. But whatever I can get as far as boards go, I'm going to stack them over here on the other side, so that way as soon as my nephew gets here, he can go ahead and start stacking that stuff up. Get some bands on it so I can get it out to the customer. So the important thing is, whenever I start taking and cutting this up, cutting these slabs out, boards, these 1 by 10s, I'm not going to go past the juvenile wood right here. Alright, because whenever you end up going past, cutting into the juvenile wood, which you can see this little orangish, brownish circle right here. Once you start getting into that, you start weakening the wood a great deal. So the log will actually start bowing, and then all your board measurements end up being wrong. So what I usually do is right before I start getting to this juvenile wood or the pith, I'll roll it 180 degrees, and I'll start taking some on the other side. So that way it allows the log not to flex quite as much, because whenever you're cutting the boards off of this side, you're relieving stress, and stress is built up on the other side where the rings of the log are. If that makes any sense. So with that said, let's go ahead and get this mill fired up, and go ahead and cut this log. Okay, now that I got this side done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll the log over 180 degrees, and I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. You may have noticed that there was a lot of water going onto the blade. What that water is mainly a cooling medium for the blade. Once the blade starts getting hot, the metal will actually start stretching, and that's whenever you start getting the dips and the dives inside of your cut. So it's highly recommended you end up using a very good cooling medium whenever you cut, especially on pine. You'll end up getting a lot of pitch on the blade if you don't. Because on pine, pine likes to stick to things, the sap, tar, and it likes to stick to things. So with that said, once it starts sticking to that blade, it causes that blade to get thicker, thereby making it rub up against the wood more and gets it hotter. Then the blade stretches, breaks, or you start getting dips and dives in your cut. So also, whenever I first started cutting into it, you notice that it started making a squealing sound. What that sound was that it was chatter. And let me show you what chatter looks like real quick. Okay, chatter on a band mill looks exactly like this. You can see right here, these are deep grooves, and then it comes up, goes down, comes up, goes down, comes up. You'll see this in certain places on the log or the boards. What this is whenever it's hitting a really hard spot, such as this knot right here, or if it's in just straight grain wood, like if it was right here, what that would be the head is actually running too slow. Whenever it's running too slow, the wood ends up caking up on the inside, causing the blade to start chattering. And that's what you end up getting that sound from. So if you notice, whenever I did it, I ended up increasing speed slightly and the chattering went away. So that way I know that whenever that chatter goes away, I'm at the right speed for that blade, if that blade is dull as it is. I'm going to have to replace that blade probably after this log is over. Alright? So after that lesson with chatter, let's go ahead, flip this log 180 degrees, and let's start cutting on the other side. Okay, now that we end up getting both sides cut, we've got the width of our cant that we're going to end up cutting our boards out of. What we're going to do now is we're going to spin this thing 90 degrees and get it sitting up so we can start taking boards off. Remember, we're not going to cut all the way down to the pith or beyond the halfway point. We're going to cut down to just before the juvenile wood, and then we're going to flip it 180 degrees and then cut on the other side. So as you can see, we ended up staying above the pith of the wood. Here's the juvenile wood, that brownish red looking orange stuff right here. That's the juvenile wood. You can see the rays of limbs whenever the tree was a juvenile that came off of it. So we stayed out of that, and now the log does not look like, or does not look like it's bowing at all. So what we'll do now is we'll end up flipping this 180 degrees and start taking boards off the other side, working our way back down to the bottom. The last board that we take off of here, we'll end up leaving it 1.25 inches thick, and that will end up being used for purlins for the roofs. So now let's go ahead and flip this thing 180 degrees and take boards off the other side. Okay, so as you can see, we've taken and cut up this log into 1x10's, and we got 1.25 inches by 10 by 10.5 foot long. Like I said a while ago, that will end up being used for purlins, for roofing, for tin, and then all the rest of those boards that we ended up cutting, those will actually go to siding for a barn that's not too far from here. A lot of these boards that I ended up cutting are very high quality lumber with little to no knots. Some of them do have knots, but I prefer the knots. It actually gives the wood a little bit more character. With that said, it's beautiful lumber, considering this log was a log that was destined for a burn pile somewhere. So I ended up taking down the log because it ended up falling across a roadway, and due to it being, for the most part, it was pretty rotted, is the reason why it fell. So, alright, so with that said, just to give you a heads up on what's coming up on Southern Exposure, I got an entire infeed deck. The infeed deck we just built. I got an entire infeed deck loaded up with nothing but poplar, oak, sweet gum, 16-foot logs. I got to cut them down, and because those are going to end up going for a rail fence on the front of the farm here. 3-rail fence so we can keep the horses in. All that's left on it is a top rail and a cap rail. So once we end up getting those cut up, get those out there, that'll end up being good. And then I can start filling some more orders with all the oak and pine we have. And I have a lot of logs left to pick up on down the road with the log trailer. So with that said, I hope this has been somewhat educational. It's helped you out a little bit. And tune in next week for another episode of Southern Exposure. Like, subscribe, and go ahead and share. Have a good day.